Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be going through all the strength dungeon. I have done my whole 2-star team. I've actually made two 2-star teams just through experimenting to get this to work, but I'm also going to go through replacement 3 stars that you can put in to speed up the runs and make them more reliable. Firstly, just because this dungeon's a bit more involved, there's more mechanics to look for at the boss stage than the other ones. I just want to go quickly through that, so we know that everything that we've got to sort of prepare for and encounter in this dungeon. So starting off, the water nymph on the boss's left, right of screen puts heal block on all of your monsters for 2 turns. That in itself is a very hard one to get around, so we'll look at that. The other nymph, on the earth one, only puts on attack break, which doesn't seem like much. But when I'm using the 2-star unicorn as my cleanser, who only cleanses 2, that attack break does get annoying because sometimes you want to be getting rid of a poison or a heal block, and instead you're getting rid of that attack break, which hurts at some times. Then if we look into the boss's skills, the boss's auto attack skill, first skill is just attacks an enemy and removes up to 1 beneficial effect from them. So it's a strip, only 1 effect, only on 1 monster, so it's not too bad. The second skill is an AoE, hits all of your monsters and blinds them for 1 turn. And the blind isn't too bad, but it's reusable in 2 turns, which is fairly frequent. And then the big thing that makes that second skill on a 2-turn cooldown really painful is that the boss has a passive which at the end of its turn makes itself immune, so it gives itself immunity so it can't cop any negative effects, and also poisons anyone it hits twice for 2 turns. So when it's using its auto attack, it's removing 1 beneficial and poisoning that target twice for 2 turns, and when it uses its AoE attack, it's blinding everyone for 1 turn and also poisoning them twice for 2 turns. So there's a lot of debuffs you've got to get through, which makes it a little bit tricky with your Wind Unicorn, but it's still doable. I won't go into too much detail on the skills and stuff of the monsters I've used in my previous videos. I feel like I've done that plenty of times. So the first team I looked at doing was focusing on locking down that water nymph and not letting it get heal block on my team so that I could comfortably heal through all the poison damage and the damage that the boss had to give. So that first team was going to be my water nymph as the healer, then my wind golem as one of those lockdown units because he could stun with his first skill and reduce the attack bar with the third skill of that water nymph. Then the wind bright fawn, because I find in this dungeon you need that second heal, the burst heal, because the heal blocks, you can't always get through it. And this heal, I max skilled this guy just for this. This heal being 50% of his own max HP. I've removed the glyph on him, which I'll show you what I'll put that onto later. But on a 2-turn cooldown is very handy, just always up, and then the defense buff as well is also really handy. And if you get lucky on evolution, you can get an attack bar reduce on this first skill, which also helps lock down that water nymph. Next one is the wind unicorn. Mine evolved into that attack bar reduction, so that's another way to lock down that water nymph. And then the last one was the wind assassin, which has obviously the poisons but also the slow. So between those 4 wind units, the idea was I could lock down the water nymph enough that I wouldn't cop the heal block. If I did cop the heal block, it would only be for 1 or 2 turns throughout the whole battle against the boss, and I should be able to get through it 1 or 2 times. But that was my idea: lock down the boss and heal through it, and then kill the nymphs, and then wear down the boss. The one thing I couldn't squeeze into this team was a Purge monster. I could have done the Earth Nymph for that Purge, but I just didn't want to build the Earth Nymph when this was all it was going to be used for, and I don't see it as good as a healer as the Water Nymph in general, and I already had the Water Nymph 5-starred, so I was determined to use that. So this team worked. I did 2 runs with it. The first run just to check it, second run to record it. and it took 28 minutes and 56 seconds. Not a good run. It spent 19 minutes on the boss just because that immunity, couldn't get poisons. The assassin, I think, dies in the one I recorded just through bad RNG. If you take that long to do something, something's bound to go wrong. So that was my beta team, and it didn't work out too well, but it still got the job done. But the thing about that team is, as I go through these teams, I'll explain the 3 stars you can sub in to make them better. And the 3 main ones are going to be the Water Tree, the Water Holy Sister, and the Earth Fellicle. 3 very good 3 stars. I probably wouldn't recommend pushing to this dungeon and trying to do it with 2 stars. It's not really that practical. I'd probably try and wait till you have at least one of those guys. I just did it to prove that it can be done, but it just saves you a lot of time. You're better off farming the Wrath dungeon for quicker runs and getting more glyphs than you are spending a long time doing slow runs on this. But that Earth Fellicle can sub into this team for the Lightning Assassin. So the Earth Fellicle has, on its 2nd skill, has a Purge. So, and obviously the 3rd skill deals 2 poisons, 1 for 3 turns, 1 for 2 turns. Speeds up the waves, make everything quicker. But that Purge is what makes him most useful, because once you kill those nymphs and you're attacking the boss, eventually he's going to purge the immunity, and then your Wind Unicorn at some stage is going to land this after it, the block beneficials. And then at that stage, you've got more of a chance of landing this thing after the Purge, because you also have your Wind Golem, reducing attack bars, and your Unicorn as well, and your Fawn, if you've got the skill, reducing the attack bar of the boss as well to make it more likely you'll get it. So as soon as that happens, you get the nymphs down, you attack the boss. As soon as it's purged, you get that block beneficials up, the run gets quick. You just poison and then the boss is dead. And this team worked for me really well. It did the run in 9 minutes and 1 second. So it was not fast, but not slow. So that's a reliable sort of speed. You'll find in this dungeon sometimes some of your monsters do get low, but I find in most of the runs I've tried, they get low, but they normally just get brought back up. You just need that heal, and then it starts rolling, especially when you've got the Windbright Fawn for that 2nd heal. So that was that team. The next team I looked at, because my first 2 stars team was just way too long, so I was looking at a team that was going to basically aim to remove the immunity from the boss as much as possible and poison him. So went with the same core of the Water Nymph, the Windbright Fawn, and the Wind Unicorn. And then for the constant purge of the boss, I decided to use the Earth Ghost. Now, my Earth Ghost, I put some skill ups into it, which worked very well in my favor. So this 2nd skill, once you put 2 skill ups into it, it is a 2-turn cooldown that removes 1 beneficial effect from all enemies. So every 2nd turn, you're going to be removing that immunity from the boss. The 3rd skill, I'll eventually 5-star this unit and max skill it, because I really like the way it plays. But once you max this skill out as well, it'll become a 90% chance to reduce the attack bars of all enemies by 65%, which is just going to make you run safer as well, because that's going to help reduce the attack bar of the nymphs. Even in the waves, it makes it safer. So that's a great unit that I've really enjoyed in this. And so that was going to be my stripper, and then I just needed something to apply poisons. And I was thinking, even something like that, even though I was looking at only 2 stars, that Earth Fellicle, I still thought it wasn't going to be good enough, because it's the 4-turn cooldown, then you hit, and then you've got to be lucky to get that. So I was looking into the poison mail mechanic, and then decided to go with the Fire Ghost. Now this is one of those other good units where I find that 2 stars, they need a really good utility or high uptime on something to make them useful. And this one, I put some skill ups into it until I got the cooldown time on the 2nd skill reduced to 3 turns. So it's a 3-turn poison mail for all your allies on a 3-turn cooldown. So basically all that needs to happen is you just need to purge that immunity from the boss with your Earth Ghost, have this on, and the boss is going to get at least, on average, 2 to 3 poisons for 2 turns. So all you need to do is have that happen basically twice in the battle against the boss, and it's dead. So that was the team. I took it in. I did a fair few runs on it, just to test out the reliability. Obviously my monsters are still all 4-star. I don't have all their glyphs maxed, and it was running at about an 80% success rate, which wasn't too bad. I was happy with that. Obviously, if I 5-starred them, upgraded the glyphs, I feel like I could get it up to a more reasonable level of success. But I was surprised at how well it was working. So that team, in the run I recorded, it was 13 minutes and 11 seconds. And it was actually a fairly bad run because it took a long time for my my ghost to actually strip the boss before he used the AoE. That's the one catch you can sometimes get into with the 2-turn cooldown. Sometimes you get in a bad cycle with the boss where you're always stripping it before it uses its single target attack. And towards the end, my Fire Ghost dies, and at the very last attack, my Water Nymph dies. And that's just due to the boss run taking too long, just bad RNG. And eventually, if that run has to take forever, you're going to die. It's not like my original team where it went for 28 minutes and you could survive. This one is all about getting through the boss as quick as possible. So then for the replacement in that team, because I have him built, I put the water tree in just to see how it would go. And the amazing thing about the water tree is that he can cover in this dungeon, he can cover the healer role and the poisoner role, just because he has that 15% heal for 3 turns and the poison mail. But when you're running that second healer with him, that's when he can really function in this dungeon as the healer, because you've got that backup heal from my Windbright Fawn, or if you have it, the Water Holy Sister. So he basically replaced, so I took out the Fire Ghost. That's the one bad thing about the Fire Ghost. I wouldn't recommend building it, just because unless you're really at that stuck stage where you want to get into this, just because that Fire Ghost is basically instantly replaced once you have this guy, because he just has so much more utility. So I replaced the Fire Ghost and the Water Nymph for this guy. That left me a fresh slot, so I put my Wind Assassin in for extra poisons. That team did fairly well. It did it in 10 minutes and 41 seconds. It was a fairly average one, the one that I recorded. The Ghost used the Purge on the first turn when the boss didn't have immunity. And then it missed 2 other Purges due to the blind from the boss. And eventually the Bright Fawn dies. But the thing to remember in this one is, I recommend to anyone, if they pull this water tree, you skill it up straight away. And because I've been working on my 2-star monsters, I haven't actually got any skills into his third, and I've only got 2 into his second. So I think if I had him max skilled, that Fawn wouldn't have died, just because I have more uptime of the heal and the defense buff, plus more poison mail. Everything dies quicker. So with a max skill water tree, I feel like that run would be a lot quicker than the 10 minutes and 41. But he's one you just put in, and then that sort of stuff happens. There was one other monster I wanted to test for a 2-star, just because the Windbright Fawn, I had to max skill him to get him affected. And I know people don't want to waste their skill ups. I don't mind pumping him into it for science sake, but I had a look at this Earth Unicorn. I did put 1 skill up into it, and I didn't get the cooldown reduction on his heal. The problem I have with this heal is that it heals and then cleanses. So if they have heal buff, heal block, they won't get healed. I tested him out. It didn't really work. I didn't have great glyphs on him either. So I still like the Bright Fawn for it. If you really wanted to and you need that, you could try him, just because he only needs 1 skill to be effective, but he's not as effective with the lower heal. And I found his AI wasn't really working. Like, if something had a lot of debuffs, he prioritizes it to heal. So something with no debuffs, he'll heal them, even though the other guy really needs a cleanse. So I wasn't impressed with him. Wouldn't recommend him, but that was just something else I tried. Although when I was recording one of his runs, I decided I'd test out how the team would work if we could actually target the boss. So if they ever introduce that feature where you can target the boss, I tested that out with this team, with him in instead of the Bright Fawn. It would work the same with the Bright Fawn, and it took me 36 seconds to kill the boss from when I entered the boss stage, just because that Wind Unicorn can put the block beneficial effects on. And then this is where the Fire Ghost is also handy, because the Fire Ghost also has a Purge on the third skill, which is useless normally because he always targets the Earth Nymph. But if you could target the boss specifically, the Fire Ghost actually plays decent into this, because then that's an extra Purge as well. So look, if you're looking at it from the future and they've introduced this feature, that sort of team can work really well, just because all those skills combined work together and just basically destroy the boss. I mentioned the Water Holy Sister. I haven't built mine, so I didn't get a chance to test her. I will test her and put out videos about how quick you can get the runs, but basically that core of Water Holy Sister, Water Tree, and Earth Felicor, I feel like they'd be able to 3-man this dungeon, because that Water Holy Sister replaces your Wind Unicorn and your Wind Bright Fawn, because the two key things you want from them is the heal from the Bright Fawn and the cleanse from the Unicorn. And she does the heal, which is a bigger heal than the Bright Fawn, on a longer cooldown. Once you fully skill her, that heal is a 3-turn cooldown, which is only one more, but it's a bigger heal. But the big thing is, as opposed to the Unicorn, at max skill, her cooldown on her cleanse is also 5 turns, but it clears all harmful effects. Also increases the speed, which the Unicorn does, but also reduces cooldowns, which makes everything much faster, much safer. So once you have those three in, your next slot, personally, I'd put in the Earth Ghost. I just feel that 2-turn Purge is just too much to pass up. And then the last spot is whatever you want. If you've got a good Nat 3, Nat 4, put it in something. If you haven't got anything like that, just maybe like the Wind Assassin for speed. If you want to play it safe, however, I'd put that Wind Unicorn in, just the second cleanse, and eventually you'll have that block beneficial effects on the boss. So that's a handy one. Another monster I was looking at, which I pulled about 5 minutes before recording this video, is the Water Juggernaut. Now, he's got a very interesting passive. So my theory with him is, to play it the safest way, so that the boss is always attacking him, you'd want to have him as your only water monster. But even if you had another one, it would still work the same, just a bit slower. But my idea was that if you just have him in your team and make him super tanky, don't worry about speed or anything on him, he'll stay above 70% the whole time. And that means anytime the boss puts a poison on him or blinds him, it'll go back to the boss. So, and because I tested him quickly before I did this video, and it's not a buff that he has, it's a passive thing, so it can't be purged either. So if you have him and the Earth Ghost, you should be able to just keep obviously removing that immunity from the boss, and then every time the boss attacks him with either the AoE or the direct attack, because he's water and the boss is wind, the boss is going to be getting 2 poisons for 2 turns. So do that twice, and the boss has lost 80% of its health theoretically. So that was another one I thought about. I haven't built it, so that's just an idea for someone if they want to try it. The last thing I wanted to mention is immunity. The Fire Druid, great immunity monster, has a 2-turn immunity with the defense buff, the healing increase, the speed, has everything in it. Another great unit you could slot in with those teams, just to prevent some of those poisons coming onto you. If you have her, throw her in. She's a great support unit. She won't really speed up the runs, but she'll make it more safe. So you could throw her in, even with that when we look at that 3-star team using the Tree, Holy Sister, and Felicor. Throw her in if you want it to be more safe. But I'd still be using that Ghost, and I think I'd prefer still using the Unicorn over her, just because sure, it is a little bit more risky because you don't have that immunity, but with the unicorn you do have that second cleanse anyway, and even if they double up on the cleanse, the water holy sister, her cleanse is also going to reduce the cooldown of the unicorn, so his will come around quicker anyway. And then you've also got that added effect of the block beneficials. So that's my little one on her. Good unit, safe, reliable. If you have her, give her a test out. She'll probably make the runs a lot safer. It's just that also her heal, because you've already got to regenerate coming from the tree, won't be as useful, but it is something that might come in handy too. The only other, the only 2-star immunity monster, I'm fairly sure it's the only 2-star, is the Earthbright Fawn. And this guy's a bit, I wouldn't recommend it at all really. Could be useful as like an arena leader, because you get the immunity and attack and defense. But in terms of this dungeon, it's the immunity on this skill, which has a 7-turn cooldown without skill ups, a 5-turn with skill ups, but it's only 1 turn. So the problem is, if you use this straight off the bat and he uses it, the rest of your team moves, you lose that immunity. It's just too not reliable enough, having only 1 turn for my liking. So I didn't even bother building him. If you really think immunity is going to save it, you can give it a crack. But for me, I just didn't see it as worth it. But yeah, so that's basically all I have on the strength dungeon so far. Like I said, I'll put more videos out as I start making faster runs, how to speed it up. But once again, just recommend, don't try and push to this with all 2-stars. You need fairly good glyphs, and if you can, you really want either that water tree, water holy sister, earth Velica, or 2 or all 3 of them, and then you'll be set for this dungeon. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks guys.